Ethan was 41, steady in the way men become steady after life has disappointed them more than once. He taught literature at the small community college, kept to his routines, and believed that quiet was safer than excitement. Quiet didn't break you. Quiet didn't ask anything of you. He had gone to the downtown park that afternoon to grade papers, the way he always did when the weather was warm. The trees were starting to turn faint gold, the kind of color that promised fall without fully arriving yet. Kids played near the fountain. A couple argued softly on a bench. A dog barked somewhere behind him. It felt like any other day, until she walked into his line of sight. She was sitting on the steps near the old gazebo, leaning over a sketchbook. The sunlight hit her hair in a warm, bright way that made her look like she didn't quite belong to the town yet. Maybe to another world, maybe to a more hopeful one. Ethan noticed her the way a man notices beauty when he isn't looking for it, but can't stop himself anyway. He forced himself back to the stack of essays. 5 minutes later, he looked up again. She was still there, 22, maybe 23, young enough to make him feel the space between their lives widening with every second he watched her. He didn't stare. He didn't dare. But something about her made the air heavier, warmer, harder to breathe. When the wind lifted one of her papers and sent it tumbling across the path, Ethan reacted before he had time to think. He stood, caught the sheet, and walked toward her. She looked up. That was the moment. Small, simple, but somehow enough to send him stumbling inside. Her eyes were soft, deep brown, and curious. Not frightened, not annoyed, just open. And when she smiled at him, it was gentle, effortless, warm. The kind of smile people give when they assume the world is still kind. "Thank you," she said, reaching for the paper. He placed it in her hand. "No problem. Wind's getting wild today." She laughed softly, the sound light but calm. He realized then that she wasn't like the other students he saw rushing through life. She had a stillness about her, as if she took time to feel things most people walked past. He should have walked away. He knew that, but he didn't. "Those are beautiful," he said, nodding toward her sketches. Her cheeks warmed with surprise. "Really? They're just studies for a project. I'm Madison." Her name felt strangely familiar, though he was sure he had never heard it before. "Ethan." Her eyes brightened. "Are you from here?" He almost laughed. "Born and raised. Most people in Willow Creek don't leave." "I did," she said quietly. "But I came back. Sometimes you need to return to a place before you can figure out what you're supposed to do next." Ethan wasn't sure why that sentence struck him the way it did. Maybe because he had spent years wondering the same thing without ever speaking it aloud. They talked longer than either of them expected. The sun slipped lower, casting warm amber across the park. Something about her presence softened him, tugged at parts of himself he thought had closed forever. And every time she smiled, that warmth inside him spread a little deeper. But when Madison mentioned why she had come back to town, something about a complicated family matter, a situation she wasn't ready to talk about yet, a quiet unease settled over her words. And Ethan felt it, like a shadow he couldn't name. He didn't know it then, but that smile he'd fallen into was only the beginning of the storm about to unravel both their lives. Ethan told himself he wasn't thinking about her. He repeated it the whole week, but every time he walked past the park or looked at a sketch someone pinned to a classroom bulletin board, Madison slipped into his mind like a whisper he couldn't shake. He saw her again on Thursday. It wasn't planned, at least not by him. He had stopped by the local coffee shop after class, hoping caffeine would help him survive a mountain of grading. The place was quiet, except for the soft hum of indie music and the clatter of mugs. He ordered his usual, turned toward a table, and froze. Madison was sitting alone near the window, sketchbook open, her brow pulled into a soft, thoughtful line. When she lifted her eyes and saw him, something warm flickered across her face. She waved him over without hesitation, as if they'd known each other far longer than one afternoon. He joined her. "I was hoping I'd run into you," she said, surprising him with the honesty in her tone. Ethan wasn't used to people wanting his company. Not like that. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said. "I'm working on something new," she replied, tapping her pencil against the page. "But I can't get it right." He leaned forward. "May I?" She turned the book toward him. A charcoal sketch filled the page. An old house on the edge of Willow Creek, overgrown porch, dim windows, chipped paint. He recognized it instantly. "You used to live there," Ethan said quietly. Madison stared at the drawing for a moment. "Yeah, until everything got complicated." He didn't push. She didn't offer more, but the way her shoulders tensed told him the story behind that house carried weight she wasn't ready to let go of. They talked again, longer this time. She asked about his classes, his favorite books, his least favorite grading habits. She laughed when he described the student who wrote a full essay about a novel he clearly didn't read. Madison's laughter was the kind that softened a room, but there was something else too, something that lingered between them. A quiet awareness, a pull he tried to ignore. She was too young, too bright, too unexpected. Everything about her felt like stepping into a place he didn't belong. And yet, when she looked at him, she didn't look away. Ethan should have left when his coffee was done, but instead they walked together toward the bus stop outside. The evening air felt cooler than before, a soft wind brushing past them. Madison clutched her sketchbook against her chest. "Can I ask you something?" she said, hesitating at the curb. "Of course." "Why does it feel like I've known you longer than a week?" His heart thudded hard, louder than he wanted to admit. "Maybe some people just understand each other quickly." She smiled, but it wasn't the same warm smile from the park. It was smaller, more vulnerable. "I think you might be someone I needed to meet." Before he could respond, a silver car slowed beside them. The window rolled down and a sharp voice cut across the sidewalk. "Madison, get in!" Ethan turned. A woman in her late 40s stared at Madison with cold, tight eyes. Her mother, he could tell instantly from the resemblance. Madison stiffened. "Mom, I told you I'd walk." Her mother's gaze shifted to Ethan, irritation sharpening. "We're leaving. Now." Madison stepped back, her expression clouding with shame and frustration. "I'm sorry," she whispered to him. Ethan watched her climb into the car, the door shutting too quickly behind her. He could feel something was wrong, something heavier than a strict parent, something Madison didn't know how to say yet. As the car pulled away, Madison pressed her palm to the window, eyes locked on him, a silent apology he didn't understand. And in that moment, Ethan knew the quiet life he'd built was about to unravel in ways he couldn't have predicted. Ethan didn't see Madison for 6 days. 6 long, restless days. He told himself she was fine, that the tension he'd seen in her mother's eyes was just overprotectiveness. But every night he felt it deeper. Something wasn't right. The memory of her palm pressed against the car window replayed in his mind like a scene he wasn't meant to witness. On the 7th afternoon, as he walked across campus toward his office, he heard someone calling his name. "Ethan!" He turned. Madison was running toward him, breathless, hair slightly undone, sketchbook clutched tight in her arms. The moment she reached him, she stopped, struggling to catch her breath, eyes full of something urgent. "I shouldn't be here," she said, before he could speak. "But I didn't know where else to go." Ethan softened immediately. "Madison, what happened?" She looked around the hall, then nodded toward his office. He opened the door, closing it gently behind them. She stood in the center of the room as if she wasn't sure whether she should sit or run. "It's my mom," she said quietly. "She doesn't want me talking to anyone, especially you." "Why me?" he asked carefully. Madison lifted her chin, the vulnerability in her expression breaking his heart in slow pieces. "Because she thinks you're a distraction. She thinks you'll pull me away from what she wants." "And what does she want?" "For me to come home," she whispered. "To stay there, to give up everything until she decides it's okay for me to live my own life again." Ethan felt his chest tighten. That's not her decision to make. Madison shook her head. "You don't understand. After my dad left, she changed. She needs control. She needs everything to feel safe, even if it means trapping me in her worry." Her voice trembled. "I left that house to breathe, to become my own person. But she wants to drag me back. She thinks the world is dangerous, and she thinks any man I talk to is trouble." Ethan swallowed hard. "Madison, I don't want to cause problems for you." "You're not the problem," she said, stepping closer. "You're the first person I've talked to in months who actually listens to me, who sees me." Her voice softened. "Who doesn't treat me like I'm breakable?" Her words hit something deep inside him, something he'd tried to bury behind years of caution. "Madison," he began, voice low. But she wasn't finished. "She found my sketches from the park. She found the drawing I made of you." Ethan froze. "Of me?" She nodded, embarrassed but unashamed. "I draw the things that change me. I draw the moments I can't forget." She held out a page from her sketchbook. There he was, sitting on the bench in the park, sunlight across his face, expression soft and unguarded. She had captured him with a depth he didn't think anyone had ever looked at him with before. He let out a slow breath. "Madison, I—" Suddenly, a sharp knock rattled the door. Madison flinched. "Madison, open this door right now!" Her mother's voice. Ethan felt the air in the room thicken. Madison's hands trembled as she whispered, "She followed me. I didn't think she would." Ethan moved toward the door, but Madison grabbed his arm. "Please don't open it, please!" The desperation in her voice stopped him cold. "Madison!" Her mother's voice rose, louder, angrier. "You are coming home with me this instant!" The hallway fell silent. Madison closed her eyes, breath shaking. "I can't go back there," she whispered. "Not like this." Ethan made a choice, one he knew would change everything. He stepped between Madison and the door. "You stay here," he said softly. "I'll handle it." Her hand tightened around his sleeve, but she didn't try to stop him. He opened the door only halfway. Madison's mother glared at him, eyes sharp with fury and fear. "Where is she?" "Madison is safe," Ethan said calmly. "She's an adult, and she deserves room to breathe." "You don't know anything about my daughter," the woman hissed. "I know she's afraid," he replied, "and that alone should tell you something." For a moment, something broke in the woman's expression, a crack in the anger revealing exhaustion beneath. But then she stepped back. "This isn't over," she said, voice cold. "Not by a long shot." She turned and walked down the hall. Ethan closed the door. Madison stood where he left her, tears in her eyes, not from fear this time, but from the relief of finally being defended. She moved toward him slowly. When she reached him, she rested her forehead against his chest, whispering, "Thank you." Ethan wrapped his arms around her, holding her like someone who finally understood what she'd been carrying. In that quiet office, surrounded by books and afternoon sunlight, they realized something neither of them had dared to say aloud. Their lives had already changed. Not because of a smile, but because of everything that followed after.